All right, so a few months back, I picked up an ADD bump stop kit. I got it for a really good price. I paid 200 bucks for this, and I think it's around 2000 new. It was missing a few components. I'll show you what it came with. So it comes like with this, I think they call this like a frame gusset, which will mount in line with the direction of travel of the truck, kind of to stiffen up the frame in the bed area. It came with your two Fox bump stops, and it came with both of the bump stop mounts brackets. They bolt to the frame there, and they go through the frame. And then there's a cross member that's supposed to come with a kit that was not included. The guy was trying to pull fast on me and said, "Oh yeah, this was like a SEMA build, and it didn't come with any of that stuff." But I figured regardless, it was a definitely good value for all these parts. And I figured I could figure out some way to make it work. It's also, this kit's supposed to come with bump stop strike pads. That's what we want, strike plates. That's supposed to mount to the axle right there, but they also were not included. So the first thing I did was I mounted those bump stop brackets, got them all in place, and then once I had it mounted up, I could measure and then go fabricate that cross member. It's supposed to look something like this. Obviously, the ADD one probably looks a little bit nicer, but this will definitely work, and it's definitely strong enough. So I fabricated up those brackets to mount to the existing bump stop brackets that are already there. I bolted those in. Then I tacked in this inch and a half square tube that fit up there. And then I had to create a spacer and basically make studs out of these bolts here, because this cross member ties into this gusset thing. So I was able to make that up. I got a couple more parts coming in. I did order some RPG strike plates, which are going to mount right there. And because I have a small lift on the rear here, I got RPG also sells these bump pad extensions. I got the 1 inch size. The other size, the next size up was 3 inches, which would just be too big. I think they intended those for towing. So I figured I'd just give you some of my thoughts on this. Obviously, it's a secondhand kit, and I'm kind of piecemealing it together. But I'll crawl under the truck and show you where everything goes. All right, so right now, I'll orient you. That's the back of the truck. All right, so if you go up, this is where the spare tire lives. This is the spare tire winch. Then there's a couple frame cross members here that you have to drill into, and this is the hardest part of the whole installation. Mounting the bump stop brackets is super easy, but getting up here and mounting, there's 4 holes on the back side, and there's there's two holes on the front that I'll show you in a second. But it's super hard to get up in here. You have like no leverage to put any force in these holes, and the installation instructions do recommend taking the bed off if you can, which obviously would make it much easier, but I just don't really think that's super practical, especially for a small DIYer like myself. It would also be super easy if you were on a lift, because you can stand under this and probably get a little bit better angles than I had. So that's the rear cross member, that piece that you have to drill into. And then the front, let's see if I can get a light on this. You see those 2 holes there I had to drill. All right, so from this angle, you can see the bump stop bracket peeking over the frame right there, right? So you see those two holes, and obviously that ties into the one on the opposite side. Yeah, you can see it right there, perfect. So that ties in going across, and then that ties into that gusset piece right there. It goes from front to back. Okay, so the next thing you'll see is I'll show you what these pieces look like when they're mounted in, to kind of give you an idea of what the whole setup looks like. And then I'll show, once those other pieces come in from RPG, I will mount those up and show you how everything works together. Okay, we're back on the truck. We have the frame gusset installed and the cross member as well. I think you have to do the cross member first, but that should all be in the directions. Yeah, you can see the cross member up there. And then the next thing I gotta do is just put the spare tire heat shield back in, and the spare tire. Then I just gotta wait for those other parts. Okay, one thing I totally forgot to mention, and I just remembered, was to talk about these strike plates from RPG. They make them out of 1/4-inch thick steel, and they seem pretty high quality. One thing to keep in mind is, yes, it's going to raise your truck an extra 1/4 inch because it goes between the axle and the leaf springs. And also, try to make sure you have a 1/4 inch left of thread on your U-bolts. We're going to have some issues. I'm really close on my passenger side. This is the driver's side right now. They seem like they're going to do the job just fine. One thing to note is with this on the normal F-150, I'm not sure about the Raptor, but I did have to remove you can see it in there a little bit. I'll zoom in here in a second. Did have to remove I believe it's an ABS line bracket. It's this black line here. I just kind of wove it in between that little gusset and the axle mount there. But yeah, you can see in there, I removed the tab, and you can see the leftover parts of the weld there that were super hard to get in there. I just left them. But here they are. I just want to make sure I included those because they're a pretty important piece on this install. All right, I got everything installed overall. This portion wasn't too bad. It was a little bit of a pain to seat the bump stops fully into the bump stop housing, if you will. Don't know if that's the right term or not. The one thing I did want to point out is if you're putting this on a normal F-150 like me and you don't have a rear lift, you're not going to have a lot of up travel before you start to hit the bump stops. I have an 1.25 inch lift over stock. If I measure here, right around 2.5 inches before I make contact with the bump stop. So if you don't have a lift like I do, you're gonna be hitting the bump stops at 1.25 inches, which is pretty minimal. I'm no expert, but it seems like that's well within like your normal operating day-to-day driving like range of motion. After you make contact, you're going to have another 2.5 inches of up travel, but once you make contact with that bump stop, your damping rate is going to increase significantly. So for me, I have about 5 inches of up travel with my setup right now, which hopefully should work out. I did order, because I thought I would have to compensate for my lift, I did order bump pad extensions from RPG. However, based on this, I don't think I'm going to end up using them. But we'll see. I'll mess around with it and do some testing. As you can see, I do have the zip tie here, which from what I've read will allow you to kind of gauge how much of your bump stops you're using. And then if you're not using all of it, you can let out some pressure from the valve that sits up here. right there. This little cap comes off too. But I have no clue what pressure these are at. Apparently, there's some nice gauges you can get, which are, I don't know, $60 to $100. But we'll see how it goes, and I'll adjust it based on how much of the bump stop I use, and I'll give an update once I use it a little bit. Hopefully this if you had any questions, hopefully this gave you a good idea of what this setup would look like on a normal F-150.